It is our commitment statement as a district. And we're going to accomplish actually three things tonight. The first will be a quick review of the proposed 26-27 budget. We'll respond to any budget questions, and then, as Mr. Talbot said, we'll be having Meet the Candidates night. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Giaquinto.
Good evening. Certainly the cliche that no two budgets are alike is really appropriate this year. This was one of our more difficult budgets, which resulted in us having a $2.8 million deficit to start the process, and resulted in the necessity to maintain program by closing a school and then further reductions or reallocations to get to the tax cap. So what ended up was a spending limit of almost $67.2 million, which was an increase of 642,000, less than 1%. We started out with almost 4.5% or 5% was our increase. Through many months of work, we got it down to a 0.97. The tax levy increase is 1.78%. That's the total amount of tax dollars we will raise to balance the budget. That is at the state tax cap limit. So $615,267 is the increase in the tax levy, almost the exact spending increase, coincidentally. Again, this is a snapshot that shows you the maximum allowable tax levy limit of 1.78. Last year, 25-26, we were at 3.25%. That was the tax cap limit. And again, we're going up $615,267 in the tax levy. The public will give us a spending limit if they approve the budget, and also authorize us to go out at that tax levy increase. The projected tax rate, which is the amount per thousand of assessed value that we collect that $615,000 increase, or almost $35 million, is going up at 2.54%, so a little bit more than the tax levy. And you'll see in ensuing slides and kind of corresponding to prior presentations, the assessed value of the district went down about $11.2 million due to a change of a business going off the tax rolls back onto a pilot. So I'll kind of hit that later on in the presentation. Here it is. I didn't know it was coming up so quick, but the Bellagio pilot, they started out a few years ago on a pilot, and then a year ago they went on the tax rolls. The pilot ended. Pilot is a payment in lieu of tax agreement, which basically takes them off the tax rolls. It's a separate agreement where they pay something less than the full assessed value of that property for usually a 10-year limit. The company negotiated with Metroplex and let us know on February 27th, a few days before the tax cap was submitted to the OSC, the comptroller, and that they were going back into a pilot, and they pulled off the 11.2 off the tax rolls. And you can see what it did as far as the shifting of revenue, where the pilot picks up some revenue, but you're losing $280,000 off the tax rolls of income. So that's the shift in the rate there. I had never seen that in 25 years of doing business official work, where someone is on a pilot, comes off a pilot, and goes back on a pilot. But it happened, and we had to react pretty quickly to adjust the tax cap. We started out the process in February 9th or 10th, was the first presentation to the board, and a rollover budget or carry forward budget shows the board what it will take to maintain all the services going forward at known or estimated increases or changes. And you can see that we had an increase of almost $3.3 million in expenses, or slightly under 5%. And I showed kind of what was driving the budget gap between the expenses going up, the small increase in state aid, small change in pilots. But the big thing there was the fund balance, which is our savings account. We were unable to use the prior year amount because our surplus was not the same as typical years, which we had a dramatic hit to our budget in 25-20 or 24-25. We had 14 special ed kids come in, of which we only budgeted for 5, which is typical. We had 9 additional kids than we budgeted, and that affected our surplus. So we can't use as much of our savings account because it's not there. So that's the almost $2.8 million gap I was alluding to, that we had to spend the next several weeks in trying to arrive at the tax cap. How we did it was through these reductions, and we went over these in the earlier presentation, but here's a summary of it. The Glen Warden closure played into this, and other reallocations or redistribution of staff. And we hit all areas. This is the instructional area, had 19 FTE reduction. I delineate between what was Glen Warden related and other areas. These are the non-instructional positions. Again, we delineate between the Glen Warden closure impact of FTEs, but you can see 13, almost 14 FTEs of non-instructional were reduced in the budget process. Other areas we looked at and addressed during the budget process was we got final BOCES pricing adjustments. We reduced some discretionary spending in other areas, and had final rates in property and casualty insurance, and we just made reductions in every area we could while still maintaining a program for the 26-27 year. So in summary, we had almost 33 FTEs reduced from the first draft of the budget. The net of real positions, because we had vacancies and temporary agencies filling positions, was impacted probably 18 people that were sitting in jobs. You can see how we got to the 2744. Staffing was almost 2.3 million. Non-personnel items was almost 325,000. And we had some increased revenue of $130,000. That got us to the 2.744,785. Very painful process. This is the overlay of how the budget of 26-27 relates to the adopted budget for 25-26. You can see the 0.97 increase at the bottom, or 642,000. But you can see that the proportion of all these categories are pretty much where they were the prior year. So the reductions stayed in proportion to our previous budget. This is the funding of the budget, or the revenue budget, and you'll see that, again, taxes, which is property taxes, which is 52% of the budget, state aids 30, almost 39%, and the fund balance, which is savings we've had from not spending money in previous years, that's like 95% of the budget. Interest income makes up some of it. That's declining now. The rates have come down, so you can see that's a decline of 125,000. But by and large, you see the taxpayers fund the school district. And again, you can see the portions are pretty much in line between the two budget years. Snapshot of the tax cap history, which was legislation of 2013-14. You can see on average our tax levy increase has been 2.16% in this time, where the cap has been 2.77, so typically the district's been under the cap. And our tax rate is 1.33% over this period, very small tax rate increase, which is attributable to the assessed value in the district. We've grown with the Lowe's, the Walmarts, the Target, everything done on, I think it's Dutch Meadow, that all the apartments and senior housing. The industrial park has had growth, so that's helped keep the assessed value growing and the tax rate low to support the school district. How does it impact the typical house? You can see that $160,000 house, about $102, and a $200,000 house, $127. This is before the STAR exemption or STAR credit, depending what you have. And then I was going to give this to Susan to go over their reduction.
So this describes for you what has happened to those approximately 18 folks that we were talking about in terms of the overall reduction of 34 positions. And I would just remind folks that about half of those positions were not filled to begin with. So they are positions that we have not been able to fill. and are going to, since we've gotten along without them, not fill them at this point. So our principal will be placed on the administrative Pell preferred eligibility list. We had 7 elementary classroom teachers and 1 elementary reading teacher. 4 of those classroom teachers were reassigned. 3 of them will end up on the elementary Pell list. The reading teacher was placed on the reading Pell list, so that's a function of both tenure and certification area. We have some teaching assistants that we will be reducing and or some folks who will move. Again, there's one of those spots at the bottom where we haven't been able to fill a position, and that position we are just going to take out of the budget. Here's the 3-year comparison of elementary and secondary faculty reductions and administrative reductions to give folks an idea. For a while, I was hearing that the only places that had been touched here were our elementary schools, but if you look at our 3-year, you know we've been talking about declining enrollment since 2012. So as we look at what we've done, K-5 and then 6-12, to address those needs, primarily through attrition, not layoffs, and retirements. They're pretty even. And now back to Drew.
So let's see, not next week, but the following Tuesday after that, third Tuesday in May is the statewide school budget votes. This will be Proposition 1 for the public to hopefully approve the spending limit, $67,155,932. The second proposition is to authorize us to go out and borrow money for one 57-passenger diesel wheelchair accessible bus, $214,000. We will get transportation aid on that in the following year. So I think our ratio is about 70% on that. So we'll get 70% in the dollar back on that over 5 years. And then Proposition 3 is the second attempt at infrastructure work at the bus garage. I think it was 2 years ago, or last year when we did it, was like $2 million or $2.5 million, so the prices have escalated as everything has lately, but we would need $3 million to basically bring in a transformer, run conduit, so we could bring in enough charging stations to transition our fleet to the electric buses by 2035. This would include digging up the parking lot, resurfacing it, taking down the old Buke School building. It's all in there. The increase to the tax levy is 0, as we would get transportation aid, building aid, and we have a repair reserve for the parking lot work, which we set aside. So if the voters approve it, it'll probably be the following spring we could start construction on that to start readying our transportation facility to house electric vehicles and comply with the state mandate. 3-part budget is what comes into play if the budget goes down. So if the budget is not approved, you can go back out with the same budget or a different budget, or go immediately to contingency budget. Contingency budget is where you cannot increase the tax levy from the prior year. These proportions are important. You can see 2627, admin, which is the administration costs, plus the directors of facilities and transportation are in there. Program is your instructional cost, including transportation. Capital is your debt service and your building and grounds. So you can see that the program is, which is instructional, and the transportation is the biggest proportion of our budget, and it's pretty much in line with the past 3 budget years. That 1173.15 kind of stands the test of time. If we go to a contingent budget, you then go to what is called a 2-part budget calculation, where you must keep the administration and the program in the same proportion of the last defeated budget or the last adopted budget, whichever has the less administrative percentage. So we'd have to reduce the budget by $615,267, if in fact it was voted down twice by the voters. And those reductions would be $82,654 in the admin side and $532,000, I think that's $613 in the program side. That's how we'd have to do the reductions. You just can't do it on one side, you have to do it in proportion. A look ahead. I did this a year ago, it was pretty close. So we haven't started the 27-28 budget, but when I started with my team to look at the state aid factors and how things have been escalating in the last 2 budget years, you can see that with the lack of state aid, which has been under 2%, a tax cap at 2%, which historically we've averaged 2.16%, showed you on a previous slide, you can see the funding's not keeping up with the escalation of expenses. Health insurance, pension, increase to wages are all superseding what the state is funding the school district. We're not alone in this. A lot of schools have depleted their reserves, underfunded their budgets. Our current budget does not deplete our reserves nor our fund balance, but we basically, I use the analogy, we've gone to the hamburger, taken everything out of it, but left just basically the hamburger in there. Now, there's nothing more that we can really do without reducing program if the aid doesn't increase. So you can see I'll be projecting a year from now about a $2.6 million gap to the tax cap. So what do we do for this? There's 3 things that I think are going to happen in New York State because a lot of schools are in distress. When schools start to fail, which is mean they can't cover their obligations, the state will take over a school. I think that'll happen in the rural schools first because they can't close schools. They usually have 1 or 2 buildings. Number 2, I believe they're going to have to look at the funding of schools. Foundation aid has to be revamped because it's based on enrollment, and enrollment's declining in the majority of New York State. So, but yet it's costing more to educate students. So they need to address that in their formula. And we're fully funded under that formula. That's why we're getting 2% or less. The other thing is the tax cap legislation. It's tough to go out at 2% when your expenses are going up 5 or 6%, because the minority can vote down your budget. So those are my simple thoughts, talking to other colleagues, that New York State's got to relook at this, review how they're funding schools. They put these mandates on and everything else, and yet they're not funding them, and they're putting more and more on the local taxpayer, and it's getting tough. So. Again, if you go to the website, there's a lot of information since February 9th, schedules, details, PowerPoints that'll take you through a lot of this that I kind of went through. And if you have questions between now and the budget vote after tonight, reach out to my office and I'll be glad to try to address them. I think that's me, right? Any questions? I won't say I'll answer them next year because I won't be here, so I'll answer them tonight. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Check. Good? Yeah, check. Hello?
Sound check.
Check. Hello. Hello. Yeah.
Okay, are we ready? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Bob Hamlin. I did communications for Scotia-Glenville for 30 years, and they've asked me to come back and do this, so I'm here today to ask the board candidates some questions. Each of you will have 3 minutes to answer the first question, the introduction, and then 2 minutes for each question after that. In your introduction, please discuss why do you want to serve on the Board of Education, what you think the board's responsibilities are, and what skills do you bring to the table, and we're going to start with Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Hamlin, and thank you to the district for providing this opportunity tonight. My name is Jason McCord. I've lived in Glenville for 10 years with my wife, Heather, a proud Tartan alum. I won't say what year she graduated because she'll kill me, or she may say what year I graduated, which might be even worse. We have a daughter, Maureen, who is a proud Glen Warden B, and she's excited to be a Glendale Cardinal next year. And I'd like to say thank you to all the faculty and staff who helped with that transition. You've been awesome and really helped her. The reason I'm running is I believe my 20 years experience in school communications, working in districts in the capital region, working with administrative educations, teachers, staff, students, families, bus drivers, facilities, food staff. I think my experience and perspective would really help with the board. I'm currently the Director of Communications at Chalmont School District. Before that, I worked 13 years for Boucher, working for districts, helping them create communication programs. I have a strong budget knowledge. I've written dozens of budget newsletters. I understand budgets and know how to communicate them in easy terms. I have 4 goals that I hope that I'm running on. One is to start talking openly about a superintendent succession plan. Superintendent Schwartz will be with us in the district for another year or 2. And I think we need to start planning and engaging our community about what they want in their next school leader. We have a lot of long-term challenges, and we need to start looking to the future. I also want to improve communications, and that starts with transparency and honesty. I have lots of ideas on how to create lots of communications programs. I have lots of ideas on how to improve communications. Another goal of mine is to reduce the administrative budget. Scotia-Glenville spends more of its budget on administrative than most of our surrounding districts, actually all our surrounding districts, and I think we need to focus our spending on program, putting as much money as we can into faculty and staff who work directly with students. And finally, just stay student focused. My whole career, I've worked with students. I love working with students and just celebrating them, and I think I'd like to bring that to the Board of Education and really just kind of make sure we're focused on students and creating opportunities for them. As far as the board roles in that, I think we're one of 7. So I understand that we have to work as a group, and I think that's a great thing because I really do want to work together, learn what others have to say, and try to move this district forward. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Karnjit?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Karnjit Singh. Some of you may know me as Sean. How I got that name is a story for another time. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Queens, New York. I moved to the capital region in 2010. In 2017, my wife and I decided to move to Scotia to raise our 3 children. My wife is a teacher assistant at Sagendaga currently, and our 3 children are currently in the district as well. Annabelle, my oldest, is an 8th grader and going to be our first high schooler in the fall, which is kind of scary. My second daughter, Alina, is a 7th grader, and my youngest, Kabir, is a 4th grader at Glen Warden, and will be a Glendale Cardinal in the fall. Just like your daughter. I'm running for another term on the school board because I want to be the voice for the parents. I also want to ensure the district is using taxpayer money effectively for student, teacher, and staff needs. One of my board goals this year was teacher and staff retention. I would like to continue that work by ensuring a positive and supportive work environment for teachers and staff, and to prevent employee turnover. Being on the board has been my way of giving back to the community that has welcomed my family and I with open arms. I'd like to continue that contribution. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Kim?
Good evening. My name is Kimberly Boucher Furnish, and my husband and I moved to Scotia-Glenville when my son Isaac was 3 months old. He's going to be graduating this year as a senior. The high school, sorry, I'm getting a little choked up about that. We chose to move here. We chose because of this, honestly, the school district. We liked the fact it was a small district, so my number, and thankfully, wonderfully true the past 13 years he's been here. I think I have the ability to be a board member because of my 13 years being an HR attorney for the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, an agency of 4,000 people. So I have to deal with HR issues all the time. I deal with the unions, I deal with management, and I've brought that to the table here in my past 3 years on the board. I hope as my first term on the board comes to a close that I've shown how deeply I care about this community and about doing what is best for our students and our district. It truly has been an honor to serve. Throughout my term, my focus has been on helping the district make the most of its resources so that we have our students and staff feeling supported and having the opportunities they deserve, but I also balance my commitment to this community to make prudent financial decisions. Every vote I've made has been approached with care, thoughtful questions, and a commitment to understanding what will best serve our community. Just as important to me has been maintaining accessibility. I've tried my best to listen to your concerns, provide you all the news I can with respect to the district, asking and answering questions, and making sure your voices are a part of the decisions being made here. That commitment has been beyond meetings. Supporting a strong, connected school community has been especially meaningful to me. As an officer of the PTSA, helping bring back the homecoming dance after almost a decade and having more than 300 students attend was about giving the students a chance to come together and create lasting memories. Working on the Tartan mural celebrated the pride we all shared in the district, and proposing the Tartan Employee of the Month recognition shines a light on the staff members who are truly there for our students each and every day. Being a part of the transition committee to help our families through this tough process we've had this year, because the work was not done once the vote was made regarding our schools. I've also made it a priority to be present at student events, whether they were athletic, artistic, or celebratory, because those moments remind us that this is what it's all about, our students, their accomplishments, and their growth. It matters that they know that the community and the board sees them and is proud of them. Like anyone who serves, I've learned a great deal along the way. There have been moments of reflection and growth, and each moment has taught me good lessons and has strengthened my commitment to listen, to improve, and to continue doing better for this community. I've always been open and honest and worked to address any missteps and remain committed to learning and improving. I appreciate the time, and I want you all to know that if you give me the confidence of coming back, I will make sure to work hard on these issues as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Katie?
Hi, everyone. So the first question is, why do I want to serve? I started my journey in Scotia-Glenville back in 2017, where much like most of the people up here, me and my husband chose to start our family in Scotia-Glenville. The year before we bought our house, I was a substitute teacher. I had just finished my master's in education, and while I was trying to find my full-time teaching position, I substituted at 20 different school districts in the area and decided where my family and I wanted to start our family, where we wanted them to attend school. And this was the community that we chose intentionally. The first couple years for my daughter at Glen Warden were wonderful, but the last couple years there's been some more issues, some things that the budget has talked about, costs increasing, funding not coming in. But part of the real reason why I'm here is through my experience on the ROS committee. I joined the committee wanting to find out how we can all as a community come together and help Scotia-Glenville. And there were a lot of things that were revealed through that process that made me feel that an educator as part of the board would be valuable, especially an educator that is dealing with the current educational system and the current situations that we have, especially post-COVID. Why do I think my responsibilities will be? I think that the responsibilities of the board are to make sure that we put policies in place that the administration will then implement in the day-to-day carrying out of the decisions that we make as a community. We support you as a community. We listen to the community. We hear what you have to say, what you recommend. We meet together. We do the best that we can to try to come up with a possible solution that benefits students and families first. And we will do what we can the best with all of the different avenues of background that we have. I think that's a great thing about our board. Everyone kind of comes from a different area, but I think what we're missing now is education and an educator, and I think that I can bring that piece to the board. I bring a lot of skills. I'm a special education teacher. I have dealt with students in all grade levels. I am certified to work with students in all grade levels. I am currently working in a downtown program on vocational skills and talking about other pathways past graduation other than traditional college, which is something that I know Scotia-Glenville is focused on right now. And I think that I can help push that program forward and have some more opportunities with trade opportunities and maybe some additional special ed opportunities coming in. But overall, I feel that I bring a lot of knowledge as a previous building director with the union for my district. I've been on the safety committee. I've sat through liaison meetings where I have to work with administration and find solutions when we both come to the table with different ideas of what will work. So I feel that all of the experience that I have as an educator and on the ROS committee could be valuable to what the board kind of needs right now.
Okay, thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
Amy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Marlette. My wife and I live in the village of Scotia, and we've been there since 2016. Our daughter, Riley, is at the Sacandaga Elementary School. She's part of the very large 2034 cohort, that fourth grade class that's just massive right now. I started showing up to board meetings a year and a half ago because I was listening at home, like a lot of you are right now, and said, hey, they could use my expertise. I've been in HR for about 20 years, and I'm HR leadership. I've done things, I have my Society of Human Resource Management credentials, I'm a certified employee benefit specialist, and I showed up here and I stood at that podium and I said, hey, you can be doing things differently. Never did I realize that that would end up in a very long conversation with our school business official talking about health insurance and how better different other ways there are to do it. So I showed up, I asked, what's the plan? I've been asking what's the plan for a year and a half. So instead of just continuing to ask the question, I'm showing up to help, and I want to help, and I hope I'm elected to help. Scotia-Glenville has a lot to be proud of, has a ton to be proud of right now. And we've made some really hard decisions in the past 2 years with these budget gaps that we continually have to address. We did make the difficult decision to close Glen Warden, and now we need to understand what comes next. What does the growth playbook look like for Scotia-Glenville? What do we look like in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? We're at a huge transition point in our district with our school business official retiring, a new person coming in. He brings 20 years of institutional knowledge that he will retire with. We need a plan forward. Because I'm in HR leadership, I've been in HR leadership for 20 years, I make people-centered decisions. It's just how I'm wired. That means faculty, staff, students. They are the center of every decision we make as a board. Every decision the board makes touches their lives literally every day, and that is a very big thing. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you this community and this district doesn't have its challenges that we're going to have to address. The first being trust. We have to rebuild trust between the Board of Education, the administration, and the community. Schools are seen as the community hubs. How many parents have you met at a baseball game, picking up your kids, or at a drama club production? That's where you talk to your community and you see, and we need to continue to build that community hub and be that community hub, and that's through trust, building transparency, and really learning to communicate to each other. So the board is a governing body that helps ensure financial stability for the district, as well as building a community that listens.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Okay, so I've got lots of questions here, folks, and you each are going to have 2 minutes to answer these, okay? Oh, and I forgot to tell you, folks, This is the order that these candidates will be in and on the ballot when you go in to vote. This is the exact order they'll be in. So, okay. Let me see. The district, this is going to be for Jay. We're going to start with Jason, then we'll rotate.
Again?
The district was able to cut its budget deficit this year by closing an elementary school. What would the district be able to cut if the budget deficit next year is as high as $2 million again? And of course, Drew showed it was going to be $2.4 million next year. So what would be the action next year?
My focus is, and I mentioned this before, is on the administrative budget. Once again, I took a look at at the administrative budget, and it is higher than our neighboring districts, and I think that is a place we can go. I would like to actually share a little budget information for folks. When you get your budget newsletter in the next week or so, look at the back page. This is called the New York State District Budget Notice, and districts often don't point this out and share this with their community. But it's what New York State requires every school district to share with their community and SED. It's the one thing they require. And in typical New York State fashion, it's very confusing. However, if you look at the bottom, the best thing about it is it forces every district to break down their budget into 3 sections: administrative, capital, and program. And the reason they do that is they want transparency for school districts. They want communities to be able to look at their budget and say how much is being spent in each area and look at other districts. We spent 11.4% of our budget this past year, 11.4% of our budget on administrative. Burnt Hills spent 9.7% of their budget on administrative. If we had spent 9.7 instead of 11.4, percent, that would have freed up $1 million that we put into administrative and that we could put in programs, helping students, maybe helping increase our graduation rate, supports, maybe some tax relief, depending on the challenge that we have. So going forward, that really is one of my focuses, and I think it's something that we really should push the administration to really look at their administrative budget and make it similar to some of the districts around us. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Karnjit.
Yeah, looking at the slide that Drew put up for next year, or the year after, I mean.
Yeah.
It was kind of a shock to me. I mean, we thought by closing Glen Warden, not that I was a fan of, would help, at least ease the budget for 27, 28. And looking at that number now, it just tells me we're going to be in the same situation as we were 2 years ago, budget time, where we're cutting, costs where we don't want to. I don't like cutting teachers, or I'm just saying teachers, anybody. I want everybody to stay here, but fortunately, a hard decision will be made that year to decide what can we do to get to the gap to the cap. We don't want. We tried going over the tax levy last time, and it didn't work. The public, spoke out, and it was a good thing, not a bad thing. But we want to make sure that we have a sound budget. The community trusts us as a board, or the new board, to make sure that we are thinking about them at all times. We're thinking about financial decisions here. We're not just playing with toy money. We're playing with real money here. We have to make sure that we spend it wisely. So at this point, to say is to ensure that the money is spent well, or wisely, and again, decisions will have to be made that we may not like. Some of us, some community members, some will be okay with it, but we have to make hard decisions come that year. So hopefully we could figure out a way to maybe not reach out to New York State, but hopefully, like Drew said, hopefully the state can reformulate the foundation aid. Hopefully more money come our way for us as a district and every district around the whole state. So hopefully that will help us. I'm hoping for it, but again, we have to prepare for the worst, right? Hope for the best.
Right. Okay, thanks. Kim.
I think I've made it clear in meetings that we've had that I think we need to take a look at our third-party contracts. I think we need to look at what we're paying BOCES for versus what we could potentially do in-house, because I'm always for paying individuals in-house for services versus going outside the district. So I think that could be twofold, helpful with the budget and helpful with the individuals that are already working for us. Administrative costs are a part of the budget, but it doesn't mean it's just simply the superintendents and the administrators being paid. It's legal and audit services, it's insurance, it is some of the BOCES I've talked about before, Board of Ed costs, and other district-wide costs as well. So while I do want to look at that, and I think I've made it clear throughout my time on the board that budgets and contracts are a deep concern of mine and what we're paying on those contracts. We need to make sure that we're still maintaining the services that we have for our kids. And I just want to make a correction. There was a point about our graduation rate. If you look on the documents that were provided tonight, but they're also on our webpage, there's a graduation rate section, and we were at 92% last year. And from what I understand, we're going to be close. We may not actually hit 92% this year, but we're going to be close with this year's class as well. So I think we had some issues. I think we're on the verge of correcting them. So I just wanted to make sure that point was understood. But I think looking at the outside contracts, looking at BOCES and looking at administrative, but understanding that it's not simply what salaries are, and we have contracts in play that we have to follow. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Katie?
I think to make that decision, I would need to have a little bit more access to the stuff that the board does, to see a little bit more of the financials that, I can see what the public does see, but that makes it hard to decide what to cut. You need to kind of see it in a little bit more of a laid out fashion. But I think aside from the fact of what to cut, I want to emphasize that I am making every effort to not have to cut anything anymore and to actually do the opposite. I want to improve programming. I want to increase programming. I think some things that we need to do to try to adjust what's happening with our finances, with the costs increasing and the foundation aid not coming in, is we need to start looking at other grant opportunities. We need to start looking at other BOCES opportunities, things with the arts and education grants, because even though those are things that we do sometimes pay out and then we get reimbursed for, there are also programs that are coming into our school that are then taking place of programs that we're currently paying for. So in the end, that helps us have more money to the budget towards other things. So I think that we do have to look at some outside contracts. I have, listened to Kim talk about that before and have kind of agreed that that is something that needs a closer look at. But I think for right now, I'm not focused on cutting anything. I'm focused on an upward trajectory and a transition that is going to make the district better.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Amy?
Thanks. That is a great question. The funding formula is skewed. I don't think anybody can sit here and understand and agree. I think everyone can agree that the foundation aid formula that the state uses is skewed. It's a decade-old data. It's not helping anyone. My finances a decade ago are very different than they are today. And that's just something, that's a reality that we have to operate in. I'm very hopeful that the state will take a look at the funding formula and reallocate those resources better. But until the state grapples with the declining enrollment across New York State, this is going to be a continuing problem. There's a lot of things that we can do. I think looking at the third-party contracts, every time Kim brings that up at a board meeting, I sit in the back and applaud. That's a great way to look at it. We do need to look at other revenue avenues. Grant writing is a huge one. There are a lot of grants out there. We run a drama program for Sacandaga Elementary, and there are 3 different grants by Disney Corporation alone that we're eligible for. If we had the ability to help write that grant, we would be able to access that money. And that's just one small example across the board. I do think that when we're looking at admin and the admin bucket, that we're at that 11.38%, I think we need to understand what that is all encompassing. That is not just 17 people's salaries. That is that's how the grass gets cut. Let's break it on down. That's everything goes into that bucket. So, and we are under contract with, our administrators do have a union and they are under contract. And we need to be respectful of those things as well. So would I love to sit here and be like, we would do these 5 things? Again, we'd have to have the true numbers and understand. Would a restructure be a recommendation? Maybe that we could do that. I've done plenty of restructures in my HR career, and that would be something that I could potentially look at.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Okay, this next question is for Karnjit. What should be done now with the former Glenbourne Elementary School? There's been talk of creating a pre-K program there, and there's also been talk that the town of Glenville might want that for their town hall. What do you think?
I didn't want to close it in the first place. That's my first thought. But we're where we at. It's okay. Honestly, at this point, I talked to Susan before about this, about possibly having UPK. That was way before, and I know we're still in the infancy talks of it with state and other districts right now. You know, again, UPK was my thought process behind that, was that bringing that program into Scotia-Glenville will help attract more families. You know, childcare is very expensive. You know, getting kids in here younger will be a great thing for us as a district. But again, right now, we're in the infancy stages at those talks, so we can't really move forward right now with that. But with the town of Glenville, I have heard that they would probably like to purchase the building, which I'm not for. I'd rather just, you know, if they want to use it, fine, lease it. I want to keep that building here in our Scotia-Glenville district, you know, part of our, you know, family here, and don't just give it away. By leasing it, we're ensuring constant money coming in. We're making sure that, again, keeping the building to ourselves, is still owned by us. No, just in case, let's say 5 or 10 years from now, there's an uptick in, you know, childbirth, and all of a sudden we need another school. Now, instead of selling it, and now we have to build a new school, we just have this one and say, hey, town Glenville, sorry, get out. We need the school back again, so we could open it right back up and hire the teachers we need and do it like we did it, I believe, in 82? 9, there we go, that's the one. 89, I wasn't here for that, sorry, I was only 5 years old. So yeah, again, just like 89, I'm hoping in the future that school will open up again, maybe for my kids, my great-grandkids, who knows when. That's where we're at right now. Hopefully that opens up again in the future.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Kim?
It's been something I've been thinking about quite a while, and it might have been noticeable during the meetings because I continuously ask questions about where are we on the assessment, where are we on getting evaluation of the building itself, because I do think it's important to determine with respect to that building, is it something we should sell? Should we lease it? Should we try to get revenue from it? Because then that answers your previous question, how could we potentially close that gap? Because if we could use the building and services like that, then maybe we wouldn't have to cut anything else because maybe we would have a large portion from that building. So I do think that I personally love UPK. I thought having my son in a school prior to starting elementary school, kindergarten, was a great service to him, especially as a working mother. But without knowing the details on what that would entail, would that be additional costs that we're going to have to incur, which if we're already in a $2 million plus budget issue, can we incur costs like this? So I'm not sure yet about the UPK question. What I am sure about is we're going to have a budget fall next year. The heartbreaking decision of closing Glen Warden, it was an awful thing to have to decide, but I think in the long run, if we can find out what the valuation of the building is, we can find out what the assessments are, it's in an appropriate zoning area where its location is, it's close to the main line with 50 in Glenville, would be potential to gain some revenue in that by using that building versus having to make cuts elsewhere.
Okay, thanks, Katie.
I think UPK is a great idea. Universal pre-K, I think, is wonderful. I think as an educator, I think any early education and early intervention that can happen to help the student acclimate to the school day, even if it's, you know, UPK usually starts out in a staggered time. You know, the 3-year-olds will come for a little bit, and then the 4-year-olds will come for maybe a 5-hour day. It kind of leads up to kindergarten, so I think that phase-in is really helpful. I think I've heard a lot about, in this district, about concerns about the amount of money that we spend outside services for special ed, different programs, consultations, tuitions outside of here. I think that this opportunity, for this UPK opportunity, is a great opportunity to start a couple of our own early intervention programs for kids like ages 3 to 5 with special ed needs, speech, OT, PT. These are things in my district and other districts around us that they're hard to find spots for, and almost every public school district outsources these classrooms. They go to Access Therapy, they go to all different, the Learning Zebra, any early intervention programs, they have some through the Y at the Lally Center. There's a lot around that the school districts are paying per CPSE student a lot of money to these outside services. So not only, one, can we bring those kids back in here and stop spending money out, but then we can create our own classrooms where we're starting our students early, with the culture and the structure that the Scotia-Glenville has, so that they're not transitioning into kindergarten from a completely different type of school setting. We are preparing our kids for our school. So I think that the UPK mixed with some early intervention opportunities could be beneficial and a possible revenue stream for us. And as far as the town of Glenville, that we're going to need the building again, whether for it's this or for another school, like Karnjit is saying, hopefully in the future. So I am not for selling it at this point, but I think leasing it to the town of Glenville, because we need to have money coming in. Having a vacant building is not beneficial while we figure out the universal pre-K. Any way that we can have money coming in and utilizing the space, I think we should.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Amy?
I truly support universal pre-K in New York State, and especially in Scotia-Glenville. However, it's not just as simple as opening Glenwarden, opening the doors and letting kids walk in. There's funding that needs to walk through. Ratios apply in a pre-K setting that don't apply in a classroom setting. Transportation, and what does wraparound care look like in a preschool world? And I do think Scotia-Glenville does have a pre-K program, and we receive about $5,400 per child in that program right now on an aidable basis. And we do have a cap on how many kids we can take into the program and receive aid on. So it's a very limiting program to the district. Coming in the budget that hopefully will be signed in a couple of weeks with New York State, I do think there will be radical changes in how that budgeting is looked at for UPK for four-year-old programs. The funding is going to go to about over $10,000 per child with no cap for the amount of children we can enroll in a UPK program. There will also be a mandate come at any person or any community that would like is to be given. That's a big ask. That is coming in the 28-29 school year. So they even took that mandate and put it above the bus EV mandate. There's a lot of importance to this mandate in New York State. So I do think we should lease the building out right now, but we're going to need that building. We have a lot of people here that would raise their hand and ask for a four-year-old UPK program. I would have been one of them 6 years ago. We need to have that building. I do think UPK is going to be much more of a conversation starting in the next board term. This mandate is coming in 2028-29 school year, and this board's going to have to handle it and respond to that mandate. Yes, it is more money, and there's no cap on students. We need to make sure that we staff this program with the correct certified staff to do so while remaining in four-year-old ratio. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Jason?
Excuse me. I also agree that I'm not in favor of selling the building. Honestly, I think pre-K would be a great use for the building. I'm a big fan of pre-K. I've seen most of our surrounding districts have pre-K, and I think it would be great for us. Honestly, I am a little concerned about what the superintendent has proposed as far as our pre-K program. If you haven't heard, what she has talked about is a regional pre-K program. Mohanison, Niskayuna, and Burnt Hills families to also drop their kids off at Glenwarden. I have a lot of questions about that. My first question is, would we have to say no to Scotia-Glenville families so we can say yes to Mohanison or Niskay or Burnt Hills families? That's a concern, and as other folks have mentioned, the cost is a concern. I really hope we can do it, and I hope the costs work, and we do get state aid reimbursement, but it often doesn't cover the full cost. So I want to make sure if we are going down that, we see information about costs, because my concern really about the cost is I don't want to create a pre-K program kind of on the backs of our K-12 program. I don't want to, if we can't afford it, and I hope we can, I don't want opportunities from our K-12 students to disappear because we're trying to create this other program. So I'd really like to hear a lot more about that. As far as the future of the building, honestly, I would hope we had a reimagining our schools committee that the superintendent chaired. Hasn't met since October. I would like to see that back up again and the public really engaged about what the future is. I read an article recently where the Mohanison superintendent said he was in active discussions talking about the future of that. It sounds like there's some planning going on, and I think we need a little more transparency about what is going on with that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jason. This is for Kim. In the next few years, Superintendent Susan Schwartz may well be retiring. What qualities would you want in the next superintendent? And do you support requiring future superintendents to live in the school district?
I'm going to do the last part first and say, yes, I do think a superintendent should live in the community that they're going to be running the district for. They should be, people should know them. People should feel like this individual is a part of the community because they're going to be making some very large and very important decisions when it comes to their leadership of the district. That turns towards the characteristics that I will be looking for. If that happens during this 3-year time frame, what we're looking for, I want somebody who is not afraid to make decisions, who understands the relationship between the board and the superintendent and how that relationship works. I do want there to be, I do want them to understand the district. Anybody that's coming to apply for it, I want to make sure that they understand what our community is like. Because every community is different, and if you're in it from another district coming to ours, I want to make sure that they understand what our district is like, what our needs are, what our community wants. I want them to answer questions that are asked. I need transparency within their communication, both with the board and with the community as a whole. I think a lot of issues can not be as much of an issue if the community is clear and transparent. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Katie?
I think that the qualities in a superintendent, transparency is definitely important. I think that they should be interacting with the community. I think that they should be in the buildings. I think that the staff and the students in the district should know them, and if they run into them in the market, know exactly who they are right away and wave and things like that. I think that they should be a face of the district, ensuring that the implementation of the policies that the board puts into place are happening in the buildings day to day. And as far as should they live within the community, yes, I think they should, but I also think that there should be a grace period with that, because we want to make sure that we find the right follow-up candidate. Our last superintendent was here for almost 20 years, right? I mean, that's a very long commitment. So we want to make sure that the person that's coming in to follow Susan has what it takes. And I would hate to discount somebody because they don't currently live in the district and their child is in 10th grade and they want to allow them to finish where they started. Like, as a parent and as an educator, I would respect that. So I think that we should have some kind of a caveat, like a certain amount of years. Within a certain amount of years, or in this portion of your contract, you have to move in the district. But saying that they already live in the district or have to uproot their family right away, I think kind of sometimes goes against the community that we're trying to establish here, making them rip out of theirs, you know? So I think that that should be considered, but depending on who that is and what their family situation is would matter.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Katie. Amy?
Great. During my tenure as in HR leadership, I've hired several CEOs and executive directors. Most recently, about 2 years ago, I hired an executive director for a local nonprofit. I have experience doing this and working in a nonprofit setting, and in hiring a leader and understanding what makes a leader of a large organization such as Scotia-Glenville successful. I do think this is a community decision. I think that just as we have portrait of a graduate, we have portrait of a superintendent. What does we of the community want that superintendent to look like? Do I think that they need to eventually reside in the district? Yes, I do. I think that the school, again, is the hub of the community, and you need that person. When you see them in Hannaford, you can wave at them and say hello and have that conversation. They show up to, you know, the Drama Dragons productions and things of that nature. They're an ingrained part of who we are as a community. I do think it's trust, transparency, and collaboration. That's what we need in a superintendent. And I think that if we have those qualities and we can understand exactly what the community is looking for and exactly what the Board of Education is looking for in hiring that next superintendent, I think we'll be successful in finding a candidate.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Jason?
I've been very fortunate in my 20 years in school communications to work closely with a lot of superintendents, a lot of really great superintendents, to be honest. And some of the leadership qualities I know that I've seen that ones that are successful, as somebody mentioned, visible, being in our schools, walking our schools every day, not just to see students, but to gauge our faculty and staff, to ensure that to build relationships, so they can answer questions, they can feel free to bring up questions and issues and things like that. They should be visible games, so they can engage with our community, at musicals, all the different things. They really need to be visible and part of our school. And it's part of building relationships, it's part of being accessible. They have to be a good communicator. It's important for superintendent to answer every email within the same day, if not 24 hours. People need to be heard, and I think that's one of the issues of the school district is people end up coming to the Board of Education because they don't feel heard. They feel like they have no other opportunities, and I think the superintendent really needs to be good with that. Trying to think of some of the other great qualities. Well, I'll talk about the residency. I'm going to disagree a little bit. I've been a part of a bunch of superintendent. I've helped a lot of communities, school communities, with superintendent searches in my career. And while the challenge with having a superintendent live in the district is you really could eliminate some really good possibility, some candidates. If somebody lives 10 minutes away, you may not want to lose them just because they can't move into the community. And the good superintendents that I've seen, they are a part of the community anyway. They may live 15, 20 minutes away, but they're here all the time. They are a part of the community. So I don't know about requiring them to live in the community. I fear that we may lose out on some good candidates, and I think that's the important part. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jason. Karnjit.
I'll answer the last part first. Regarding residency, I believe there should be a buffer in time when they should move into the district or into the community. I sort of agree with you, Jason, but the point being that they should be close by. They shouldn't be too far away from the district. If something happens, they need to be in the office. Like, where's the superintendent? Oh, 20 minutes away. She had to get over here, or he or she had to get over here first. So I would like to see that first. I'd like to see them come into the district, live within the community, be visible at all times, be transparent with the community, make sure they're not viewed as I don't want to say higher power. They're not viewed as a superior. They're viewed as a community member, viewed as an equal partner with the community, with faculty, with community member, with students, and again, like everybody else said, go to the games, go to the Drama Dragons, go to the high school musical, the middle school musical, and be present, and be, again, like I said before, be vocal, be transparent, and be understanding.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Katie, this question is for you. Candidates often campaign on ideas they hope to achieve, but sometimes contracts or legal limitations get in the way. If you're elected and run into these kind of barriers, how will you stay accountable and follow through on the promises you made to the voters?
Well, I think that's pretty easy because the promise that I've consistently made to the voters is that I'm here strictly to improve the school district for the experience of the students and the families. I don't really have any prior agenda. I don't really have any big things to do day one other than to just get in and get a real good look at what we have going on and see how I can help. Throughout the process that we were going through the ROS committee and then following through the board meetings, there were a couple different situations where I watched some board meeting presentations and I had questions about the data. I was concerned about the data. I had had meetings with Rick Arquette. I had spoken at the board meetings before, and I feel that my issues come up in the moment and kind of what we're dealing with in the matter at hand, and I will research and investigate whatever matter we have. I will, whether it's someone else's talking point or someone else's main goal when they come in, if I am on that board with them and that is something that we are striving towards, I will jump on board and I will do the research and the data needed to come up with the best possible solution that's going to benefit the students and families. So I think one important thing that we have to understand is this is a committee and we are all going to have to work together. We may not all get our initiatives done right away. It might not be till year 2 or 3, or it might not happen at all, but the important thing is that we're all here with a common goal to help the school district and the kids and focus in on whatever that task is in that moment.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Amy?
Thanks. That's a great question. I'm coming here with the attitude of how can I help? What's the plan and how can I help? And that's been my promise since a year and a half ago, and when I showed up asking those questions. So I'll continue to ask those questions, and I do believe communication. Communication is going to be the foundation of how this board moves forward. and how this community moves forward, and making sure that we understand what we're talking about and that we have an understanding of who we are and what we're trying to achieve here, and that is the success of every student at Scotia-Glenville. So I think that, how can I help? I really would like to see if we can put together some type of growth playbook for Scotia-Glenville, and I'll continue to push that forward and to see where we can land on that.
Okay, thanks, Ann. Jason.
Thank you. I'll go back to my initial thing. We are one of 7. It is, as you mentioned, it is important that we all work together. While we all may have I have some passionate ideas and goals. I also understand that it's working with the board and making sure that we work together. And if I'm the one person, well, I'll have to kind of swallow that and work with everyone and see where we go, because we really do need to come together to lead, I would say.
Okay, thanks. Karen.
Repeat that the question one more time. I missed some of it.
Candidates often campaign on ideas they hope to achieve, but sometimes contracts or legal limitations can get in the way. If you're elected and run into these kind of barriers, how will you stay accountable and follow through on the promises you made to voters?
So being on the board for the past 30 years now, and I came in thinking gung-ho, I'm going to do whatever I said I was going to do, I'm going to do all this, and it didn't start as I'd like. It took me about a year or two. But I learned through the process of, again, like you said, contracts, working with other team members, what their thoughts are, working with Kim and everybody else on the table, working how, what their thought process is, trying to work together. It's not all about, what I say goes, it's what we say as a, board. Again, not all 7 of us will agree at one time, but sometimes we do, but again, that's past, Glenn Warden decision, there was 2 of us that didn't vote for it, and that's fine. That's why it's the 7 of us, the majority, vote rules. So I will try to keep myself accountable and ask questions that need to be asked at all times, and ask those questions, make decisions based on those answers that I get. And if I don't get the answer I like, I can decide, wholeheartedly and say, yeah, I agree with that, but I won't. I have to make sure all the data is there. I have to ensure that everything we're doing is what's best for the kids, the staff, teachers, and the community as a whole.
Okay, thanks. Kim.
When I ran 3 years ago, it was under the promise that what I can hold in my power was to communicate to the best of my ability, to answer questions that I legally can answer. There are some that sometimes we're not able to answer for legal reasons, but to be open and transparent. I also was concerned about the financial piece of the district, and I was concerned that our students were not necessarily getting everything that they needed. I think in the 3 years I've been here, I've worked very hard to be open, transparent, ask questions that I wanted answers to, but I also thought that maybe the community wanted answers to, and also to discuss the different specifics of the budget, and also the specifics with respect to how are we handling our staff, how are we handling our students, how are we doing the best for everybody in the community. I intend to continue on that path, and I intend to continue on that path if the community decides that they want me to do so. So I think the things that I had power to do, I have been trying my best to do them. And that's all I can do, as everybody keeps saying, one of 7.
Okay, all right, thanks, Kim. Okay, this is Amy, this is for you. Define what confidentiality is when you're a member of the school board.
Can you repeat that? Yeah, can you say that we didn't hear you?
Define what confidentiality is when you're a member of the school board.
Confidentiality, first and foremost, is trust. Knowing what is for public consumption and what is not for public consumption. The board needs to feel free to understand their confidentiality that is required in executive session, and needs to respect that ultimately, no matter what, even when it's hard. There cannot be any leaks coming out of executive session. That puts all decisions made in executive session at jeopardy. So we can't have that. Board members are given the ability, by being elected to be board members, to hold confidential information, and they need to respect that power that they have in that. And we need to continue to truly honor that confidentiality and respect the district and respect the board in that confidentiality. Just as in HR matters, you have to proceed with caution and understand once you break confidentiality, you break trust.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Jason?
Can I say ditto? No. I think you captured it perfectly. I think everything you said is spot on. I've spent, as I keep saying, 20 years in school communications, working very closely with administration and superintendents. I am privy to a lot of confidential information that I cannot share all the time. And so that's something that I hold very dear, because Amy, you're absolutely right that you can't breach that on confidence. So I'm very used to doing that, and it can be difficult because you have things you want to share, but you really just can't, because you need to respect the district, you need to respect the Board of Education. So I've been doing that for a long time. So go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Karnjit?
Confidentiality is very, obviously serious word. Everybody may think that we go to executive session, have steak dinners. We don't, I promise you. A lot of things are discussed with us that we need to keep confidential, because there's personal information that we're learning about, is information about contracts or discussions of contracts that are going on. Like my past history, I worked in with the federal government in security, and they entrusted me with top secret level clearance. So confidentiality runs deep with me. So it's kind of hard sometimes, especially at home, when my wife is working here and my kids go here. Luckily, they don't ask me. I told her, listen, don't ask me anything. You don't know anything. Simple as that. So again, and meeting with the community all the time, they may want to ask, hey, what's going on? What's going on? No, I can't. Sorry, can't tell you, because the personnel that we're talking about trust us to keep whatever's going on with their situation confidential, stays with us. And when it's time to whatever, release it or not release it, it's up to the superintendent or up to the district itself in general. So when it comes to confidentiality, I take it as a serious, thing.
Okay, great. Kim?
This goes back to the answer I had to the last question, because confidentiality is so important when you become a board member. Anything that's discussed during executive session, anything discussed about particular personnel, anything that's discussed about individual students or classes of students, and obviously the medical and health of any of our staff or students that are in the district. But I think part and parcel with that confidentiality is not just only the board member understanding it, but explaining it to the community that we're not trying to hide information from you. It's only legal obligations with respect to this confidentiality, but we also have ethical obligations when it comes to this confidentiality. Because if you think about it, if you're an employee at a job and something happens, is particular to you, I don't think that individual would want that discussed to a large community. And it's makes it a little bit more interesting when you're in a school district, because parents, understandably, and the community, understandably, wants to know everything that's going on. We've had that issue come up in the past 3 years I've been on the board. So not only is it the board member need to understand themselves what the confidentiality is, but needs to explain it kindly to the community so they know that information from the community, that we're under these legal and ethical obligations to keep that information confidential.
Okay, thank you. Katie?
Confidentiality is extremely important. As a special education teacher, I write a lot of IEPs for students for their individualized education plans, and these are legal documents, and they are designed specifically for students, and it is confidential information. And so I have to have lockable storage, and I have worked with unions, and so I understand the importance of keeping documents safe, keeping things appropriate, not leaving things out, not having conversations with people outside of executive session. People can ask, how are things going? You can't give them details. You can't talk about people. You can just kind of give some broad, we're working towards it, head in a positive direction. You can still give people some kind of feedback without breaking confidentiality. But as a special education teacher, I have to keep confidentiality for my job all day long to keep the dignity for our students. So this is something that I am used to.
Okay, great. And you answered already. Okay, so this is for you, Jason. This is a question from the audience. There's a lot of talk in the community about the school district being administration heavy, and you've already talked about that a little bit. Do you agree, and if so, how will you address it?
Obviously, I do agree. I've talked a little bit about that. And while I've talked a lot about administrative, and I think it's important to get that, but I'm not talking about eliminating, just cutting staff. I think a big thing is, it's almost a long-term thing. When administrators retire or they leave the district, I think the district needs to take a look and say, do we still need that position? We have a lot less enrollment than we had in the past. So I think we need to take those opportunities very seriously when we have a position and we may be able to do something differently. I also would I would like to see if there are positions that are nature that where we could move folks into working directly with students, because I think that is the key. I've talked about administrative budget. I want to focus on program. We really need to put our money into faculty and staff working with students, because that's how we can make the most difference. So I would say that's my focus.
Okay, great. Karnjit?
Are we heavy in administrative? Currently, I would say no, because I'm saying that because if you know from the year prior, we had reduced our academic heads from 4 to 2, and the other 2 took on the responsibility of the ones that we have an HR person that is in, well, no, we don't, actually, take it back, is an interim person that's covering for HR at this present moment. Sure, to possibly reduce, of course there is. It depends on, again, it depends on student, I'm saying this wrong, I'm sorry. Depends on the enrollment numbers. So it depends, do we need all the people in the administrative, bucket there at that time? Maybe not, maybe you do, I'm not sure. At this point, I would say, no, we're not too heavy, but doesn't matter again, and make sure we're fulfilling every obligation we need to ensure our kids are getting the best education possible.
Kim?
I agree with Karnjit. We have in the past couple of years with respect to administration. I do think that we should always be looking at that, just like we should always be looking at reductions in all areas. But we also have to keep in mind the contracts that are in place. They also have tenure rights when you're talking about individuals. So you have to respect all of that, and legally you have to comply with it. So we should be looking at every part of the budget to see what is the best way to reduce whatever we need to reduce without being detrimental to our students.
Okay. Katie?
I kind of agree with everyone as well. It's another one of those questions where without really looking at all of the facts and figures broken down, it's hard to say. I do think that kind of what everyone said in the previous question, not so much this one, is that there's a lot more that goes into the administrative budget than what people think it is. People think the administrative budget is mostly just, the top tier people in the district, but there is a lot of other stuff that goes into that. And quite honestly, from my perspective, going down from 4 to 2 main district staff is already quite the decrease. And we are a smaller school district with a declining enrollment, but we still have over 2,000 students that we have to serve, and a lot of decisions that have to be made and a lot of changes that are happening with curriculum and education and the way that things are coming out. So I think that reducing those specific numbers, I don't think that's in our best interest right now, but I think that we look at all those other costs that are also grouped into that administrative thing and see where we can make cuts.
Okay.
I agree very much with Katie, is that we need to look at where our operational efficiencies can be found. I do think that our administrative budget right now, it is today, that is also bound by contract. We need to honor that for right now. We did go down from 4 heads to 2 heads, and we're making that work. You can even see it as something as simple as our Board of Education meetings. The agendas used to be very nice and clickable on the website, and now you have to go into a very long PDF, and that's because we reduced our administrative budget. That is 100% why that happens. Do I think that there's opportunities for operational efficiencies? Yep, as there is in every organization. But going forward right now, I think we need to look at, as a whole, how can we help bridge that gap that we're looking at next year.
Okay, thanks. Karnjit, this is for you. A parent of a high school student is upset that their child received a disciplinary consequence for violating the high school code of conduct. They want to intercede on the child's behalf and have the consequence removed. What do you do? I'm sorry, they want you as a board member to intercede on the child's behalf and have the consequence removed. What do you do?
There are many instances in the past 3 years that parents come up to me and I'm not gonna say gripe, but come to me with a concern. Now, first thing I will say is, did you go through the chain of command? Did you go through the steps necessary? Did you go through the coach, I'm sorry, what am I saying, coach? So I'm thinking about 80, I'm sorry. Did you go through the teachers? Did you go through the assistant principal, applicable? Did you go through the principal? Did you go through all that chain of command before it comes to us? So I want to ensure, again, whenever they come up to me and they tell me, my child is such and such, just have to do something about it. I said, it doesn't work that way. I only have one employee, and that's the superintendent. If you didn't go to her first, then you can't come to me right away. So I was, err to, decide to caution, go through the chain of command. Once you get to, past the superintendent, then it'll fall on me, then we'll take it up then.
Okay, thanks. Kim?
Yes, as a board member, that is not something I would be able to handle directly, because under the law, I'm not able to handle it directly. There is a particular path that goes, chain of command, as Karnjit said, but also a particular path, legally speaking, with how somebody appeals such a decision and the path they have to follow to do that. Would I direct them to the appropriate people to make that appeal? Definitely. And I'd explain to them that there's a particular path in place that's by law and by function, and make sure that they understand that. But beyond that, as a board member, I would not be able to handle that.
Okay, Katie?
I think that there's a lot of missing information about this that makes it really hard to answer this question. Like, what did the child do? Like, what did we violate? What level of code of conduct? Are we in the earlier stages of like 1? Are we talking about a violation of level 5 where there was like safety concerns? Because that makes a bit of a difference for me. I do think that the chain of command does have to be followed. This does seem like a school district position. You go to the principal first, and then you can go up the chain to Susan. I think that if the parent is still upset, that they can bring their concerns to the board, and then we would discuss it as one of 7. But I would not say that without knowing more information that we would reverse it as a board. I don't think that we could make that statement now.
Okay.
I don't think it's the board's job to reverse a decision that has not made it through the chain of command. That it has to go through those steps to ensure that it's being looked at fairly. If it gets through the superintendent and the decision is still of concern, as Kim stated, there is an appeal process and to work through, and it would be following that process as a board member and not promising something to the parent that the board can't deliver on.
Jason?
Not to sound like a broken record, the first thing I wrote down was chain of command, so I guess we all have the same thought on that. Yes, that'd be my first thought as well. Everyone said it very well, is that have you talked to the teacher? If you have you talked to the assistant principal? Have you gone principal? How has it gotten? If they've gotten to all that, well, as said, try to direct them to where they can get help. But no, you can't. You can just, as we said, you just can't say I'll take care of that. It's just, you just can't.
Okay, great. Okay. Kim, this is a question from the audience. Can you share an example of how you've handled conflict in previous roles?
I guess people could say as an attorney, I probably handle conflict a lot. With respect to previous years on this board, this last season, I think last year's budget showed a lot of conflict. There was an increase in the budget, a significant one, so it went over the cap, so we had to get 60%. I didn't necessarily agree with that. I thought that we should try to get to the cap. I thought that there was other things we could do, but I also realized that the only thing the board did at that time was giving it over to the community, so the community can make the choice as to what they wanted to do with that budget. So with respect to that particular conflict, although I didn't necessarily agree with the budget as it stood before it went to the community, I wanted to give the community the opportunity to speak on what they thought about the budget. So I voted to have it go to the community. So that's how I handled that particular conflict.
Okay. Katie?
When I think of conflicts that would relate to my experience as a possible board candidate, I think mostly to my time as a building director for the union, for the SFT, for Schenectady City School District, where I represented 90 teachers. Me and 4 other people represented the 90 teachers and teacher assistants in the building. And we had to have liaison meetings with the administration on multiple occasions on concerns for student safety, and have conversations where we have to bring up contractual obligations that they're not being held to, talk about grievances, and kind of talk about how we can make that school safer. It was a very challenging time there about 4 years ago, and the union had to really come to the table over and over again with administration, bringing documents, bringing data, bringing research to kind of support our reasons for taking different action. And it was a conflict for 3 straight liaison meetings where they did not agree with the action that we were recommending as building directors. But over those 3 meetings, we eventually came to a compromise that eventually did improve the safety of the building. But that conflict over those 3 meetings was very difficult. We had to have conversations as the 5 of us on the side, kind of like we would as 7, and kind of see what are our main priorities moving forward. But going to the table with a goal, but also being able to listen to the other side and come with an amiable solution is, I think, how you solve conflict on a board.
Okay, Amy.
Being in HR, conflict is kind of what we do, whether we're involved in it or mediating it in any capacity and having those conversations. You can't shy away from the tough conversation, and you have to be willing to collaborate with one another and have conversations with the board. We're not always going to agree on every single thing, but we need to be able to have the respect for each other and the respect for the administration and the district office to have those tough conversations and to be respectful during those conversations. We're here for student success. That's our main goal. And if we're all working towards that goal, yeah, we're going to have different perspectives and we're going to have different approaches, and that is going to be an issue. It's going to create conflict. Conflict is okay if it's respectful and it's getting a better perspective and moving us in the right direction.
I'm sorry, Jason.
Respectful, so, no, I think that's spot on. I think with conflict, I deal with the community a lot, lots of different stakeholders in communications, so I've dealt with a lot of conflict. It's making sure people felt that they feel heard, being respectful with folks. As far as the Board of Education, as far as like any conflict, again, we keep saying 1 of 7, but we really do need to work together. It's taking the time to listen to people, make sure they feel heard, truly heard, not just lip service, but making sure you understand where different people are coming from, and working with them.
Okay, thanks,
Dealing with conflict, my friend over there, Heather McCord, could tell you that during our ROS subcommittee in transportation, we had a lot of heated discussion on grade level centers. That was a hot topic of those meetings. I personally wasn't a fan at first. I really wasn't, and I was trying to just wrap my head around, would it make sense? Would it make sense for all the kids? Would it make sense when you have siblings? There's a lot of thoughts came behind that, and I still wasn't sold on the idea. And then eventually everybody started turning. Yeah, that's good. I'm like, no, what's going on here? Why are everybody turning on me? And in the end, luckily it came to be where, it wasn't, grade level center was not the choice. It was still K through 5, which I was happy about at the time. Not saying that we shouldn't do it, but it shouldn't be at the time when we're closing one school at the same time. I thought maybe in the future we could look at it again. But again, those conversations were, again, very heated. Those are conflicts that I had that I thought I was going to be very big conflicts with the rest of my board members, but luckily we weren't. But I respected everybody's thoughts, everybody's feelings. I always told them, listen, just sell it to me. Sell it to me. Why is it so good? Tell me why am I wrong? I always preach that at all times.
Okay, great. Okay, now this is another one from the audience. This is for Katie. What are your views on the free speech of teachers and supporting a diverse community where students see themselves reflected?
What are my views on the free speech of teachers and what?
And supporting a diverse community where students see themselves reflected. Basically DEI, I think, is what they're asking about.
Okay. Well, I am a strong believer that equity and inclusion are important in everything that we do in schools. Every student has the right to an equitable education, and every student has the right to learn in the setting that best serves them and given the resources and skills that will help them succeed. I think teachers should foster a classroom that allows students to speak their opinions respectfully. I think that we should be able to share our ideas with each other and our feelings with each other and hear different viewpoints and hopefully come to some kind of common ground, but do that in a respectful manner. I do think that teachers do have to help facilitate that conversation a little bit. I think that with social media kind of influencing our students and everything on the outside, internet games, things like that, that they're exposed to early on, that students may bring ideas about other people to schools that does not foster the idea of equity and inclusion that we are trying to strive for. So I think that teachers should allow free speech within the classroom in a respectful manner, but also be facilitators of ensuring that that happens appropriately.
I do believe this is a case of mirrors and windows that kids need to see in the classroom, people around them that look like them, and see people that have different perspectives and different lives than they do, and it creates a more empathetic group. I think that's something that all of society could handle a little bit more of, is being a little more understanding of everyone else around them. And because of that, I do agree that teachers should have a free speech within the classroom, but it should be in a structured, appropriate manner, an age-appropriate manner. And I think that is something that Scotia-Glenville, we made a commitment to diversity last year. There is the diversity committee that I serve on. I do hold a certificate from Cornell University in diversity and inclusion, and I truly support diversity and inclusion and equity in our schools. And I think that is what will move our school forward.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to be supportive and of allowing free speech as long as it doesn't harm anyone else's education. I think that is really one of the standards, making sure that it doesn't cross that line. It's about being respectful. As far as the DEI part, I'm in favor of the DEI's initiative. I think it's great. To be honest, looking at students, and when you think of it in that context of just making sure students feel included, that they have equal opportunity. I think the challenge, honestly, with DEI, and it's a shame that it's become the phrase DEI has become so politicized. And it's unfortunate because when you break it down to what it really means for students, it's kind of easy to support. And as far as DEI, I think we also have to be, when we talk about it, we need to be careful with our community, because I think a lot of our community does not support, in general, DEI. So something I've always seen with when you have challenges like that, it's important to frame issues around students. What does it mean to students? Because when people see how these things really help students, it can really convince them of the worth of something. So go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Karnjit.
I agree with the part of the teachers that have a free speech. Being on with Amy on the DEI committee that we started last year, 2 years ago, I think we made great progress. There's a lot of community members, teachers, faculty, Rick, we're a part of this, the whole DEI initiative, and I believe, so far, I think we're making great strides with it. My kids tell me all the time, the classrooms are very diverse, everybody's equitable, inclusion's, wholly there. I never heard anything bad personally, but I think we should always strive, to make sure our classrooms are diverse, they're equitable and inclusive.
Okay, thanks.
I definitely believe strongly in inclusion. The job that I have working for an agency as the HR attorney is because I believe so strongly in equity and inclusion, and I think it needs to be a proactive and not a reactive effort. And I think that translates also to our school districts. It needs to be proactive, that our children are treated equitably, but also that they don't see everything being always the same. I don't think our students will get a full and good education without having a worldview and seeing the differences that everybody has, no matter who you are. And in fostering that, I think that goes hand in hand with free speech for our teachers to be able to talk to it. Respectful, obviously, is the key. Age appropriate is probably another important aspect to that. But if our teachers can't foster that relationship with the students, being able to speak freely and give their opinions in an appropriate manner, then I don't think our students are learning everything that they probably should learn.
Okay, thanks. All right. This is a question from the audience and is specifically for Katie. Having an educator at the table is important. Can you share your current and past experiences in education? And you've done some of that already, but can you share?
Okay. Well, so I've always loved children. I started babysitting with the Red Cross babysitting course when I was 12. I was kind of right into it right away. I had a little brother who was 7 years younger than me. So when I was 7 and I had a baby in the house, all of a sudden I realized how much I loved being around children. My jobs in high school were working at the YMCA after-school program at Woodlawn Elementary in Schenectady. I continued my education journey kind of started, I guess, really in the after-school programs. I then when I was coming home from college, I worked at this Camp Lovejoy for the Boys and Girls Club at summer camps. I then worked for Center for Disability Services while I was finishing my bachelor's degree in social work at the College of St. Rose. And then once I graduated, I realized I loved special education, and I became a full-time teacher's assistant there while I was going to grad school at night for 3 years until I finished that in 2014. I then, after that, like I said, I had subbed in 20 different districts intentionally in 2 different BOCES to figure out where my husband and I wanted to start our family and kind of put our roots in deep somewhere. And through that experience, we chose here. I went back to the Schenectady School District and I have worked in a variety of special education placements. I have done intensive skills, mental health, self-contained. I have done Learning Center, which is similar to our 1511 that has self-contained for math and ELA and reading, but pushes in for social studies and science. I have been a genuine just 7th and 8th grade co-teacher. I currently work with our alternately assessed students and do the vocational activities with the Liberty ARC and work with Schenectady Connects. I've worked on the safety team. I am part of the PGAP Council for the Schenectady School District that makes all the decisions for professional executive leaders with the executive leadership team and the union leadership team. I think I'm done.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. This is another question from the audience, but this is for as current board members, can you share how you have advocated to increase graduation rates in the district?
For me?
Yes.
Okay.
You and Kim. Yeah.
I know I personally pushed for better ways to help our students that are, maybe falling, maybe not a good word, but those kids that need extra help, need extra tutoring. How can we succeed here? And that's actually ultimately my desire is to make sure every Scotia-Glenville school district child graduates from high school and we set them up for success. So I push for better ways to help them after school, or teacher tutoring at their house, or just help them in any way, like attendance. Like, what are we doing with making sure they come to school, make sure they make it in time, make sure they're attending all their classes, not skipping classes if they are, hopefully not, but that's just a couple of ways to push for that.
Okay, great. Kim.
Well, our graduation rate has increased since we've been on the board, as with 92% last year. I believe we're looking at somewhat similar this year. I think I've made it clear during meetings that I think there are certain educational pieces that could be worked on. Grammar was a huge issue for me. I felt like that there needed to be more of a push with respect to a curriculum for grammar, but also with alternate career paths, because not everybody goes to college. Not everybody wants that path, and I think if we are more open and show more with respect to these alternate paths, that's going to make kids want to keep coming to school, because they realize, okay, I'm not coming to school directly to go to college, I can do other things as well. So that's why both Kim Talbot and I have been pushing to have an alternate path with respect to doing a trade event, job fairs, making sure that our students understand that we want you to graduate, but it doesn't mean you have to go to college. There are other wonderful opportunities for you to have with respect to your jobs as well.
Okay, great. Okay, who submitted this question about Broad Open Perk? That Susan just gave me. Was that your question?
No, it's mine.
Yeah. Can you ask that yourself? Because I really understand what you're asking.
Okay.
I think I know what you mean, but I want to hear from you.
Okay, I'll explain. Basically, what on the
Oh, you can come over here if you want. Yep, right here.
basically what I mean is that the reason why I'm asking this because I used to go to Perth High School, and then I was taken away from them, and I was upset about that. So basically, I was wondering if I was living in this school district, would you allow me to be transferred to my preferred school, which was Port Auburn, Perth?
While you're living here.
While I was living here. If I was living here at the time.
So if you were in Scotia,
At the
but you want to
time.
be at Broad Alban, you
Yeah.
want to know if you could be transferred.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the question.
That's very brave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, oh,
Good.
Actually, what he's saying is, if he lived here, would you send him to Boston?
Brought up a birth.
Do I have that right?
Yeah.
If they have it.
Yes. And then he
That's
had to
what I heard,
switch
yeah.
districts. We talked about it last year.
But he wants to go to Broad Alban.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
Okay.
Although I did not live here at the time, I'm only saying if I did, even if I did.
You would still want to be at Broad Alban.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
yeah.
If I was living here at the time, I was wondering if you would do that. If I was living here at the time.
So if that happened to someone else, what would the school do?
Yeah, I was wondering what the school would do.
Who would you like to answer first?
Yeah.
Oh,
Jason first.
Hey, Jason.
yeah, let's start with Jason.
No pressure.
Okay, he knows that.
First of all, thank you so much. Thank you for your question. I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure. I would have to talk with administration. Usually have to live in a district, but to go there. So I'm not really sure, but I certainly would try to help get an answer to your question.
Honestly, right away, I would say yes, I would. But the thing is, if we send you to Broad Alban Perth, the question arises well, who's going to get you there? Are your parents going to get you there, or is the school taking the cost of it? So that plays a factor. So a bus that especially goes to Broad Alban Perth every day and picks you up every day becomes a cost issue. Not that we don't want to, just want to make sure it's it's cost efficient to the district to send you there. So there's a couple of questions there that need to be answered first before those kind of answer. That make sense? Or so yes or maybe, maybe.
Strong maybe.
Kim.
On a personal level, I would love you to be where you feel like you're happy and where your happiness lies. As a board member, I would have to defer to the way the law works with respect to that and how that functions. Because I know that, and I don't know the nitty-gritty of it, but I do know that there are specific requirements and laws in place with respect to where a student ends up going. So I'd have to defer to those. But on a personal level, I would want to make you happy.
Thank you for your question. I think it's an important question. Before I answer it, I just want to say that I really understand where you're coming from with that and wanting to be in your school. One of the reasons why I'm running is because as an elementary student, I went to 4 different elementary schools in 4 different districts. And I know what it was like to have to make that transition and how hard and difficult that was over and over again. And that's why when I chose Glenville to plant my roots, I intended on staying and doing everything I can to just improve this community. But for you, I heard you ask this same question last year or a similar question, and I really thought on it a lot, like, that's a shame that had happened to you, and I feel really bad that happened to you. I don't know what this district has in play. I would have to find out a little bit more, but I know it at least in my school district, that's Schenectady, There's now some programs called McKinney-Vento that are in play that allow that student to get some kind of transportation to Broad Alban Perth, at least for the remainder of that school year, until we can come up with the proper transition plan to get you to the next school, so that it wouldn't be in the middle or uproot. So there are some programs in place to try to help like individuals like yourselves that have gone through that. We've learned from that as a society. So I'm hoping that maybe Scotia-Glenville would have something like that in play, or could get something in play if that happened to another student.
Thank you for standing up and asking your question. It was very brave. I do agree that I would need a lot more of the specifics for Scotia-Glenville, and making sure that we have programs here that we can service all children. And if we can't service those children, having to reallocate them to a different program. And that is something that we do have to do as a district from time to time. And I would, for your happiness, I would like you to be in the program that you'd like to be in. But I'd have to have a lot more understanding of the rules and regulations around what that would require.
Okay, my final question is, and we're going to start with Jason, I guess, because I lost track of where I was.
I get all the first.
I guess it's not the last one. Okay. Well, my question is, do you support the budget and the propositions? All the propositions?
Is that to me?
Yes, Jason.
Okay,
Start with
do
you.
I support the budget and the propositions?
Yep.
Start with the school budget. Yes, I do support the school budget. I appreciate the Board of Education staying within the tax cap this year. I am not in favor of going over the tax cap in general. I appreciate all the work that Mr. J. Quinto put into the budget to get a budget that has a tax levy increase under 2%. I think that should be a district goal if we can do it. As far as the propositions, as far as the transportation
There's a diesel
one,
bus, and the electric infrastructure.
Always support school buses. It's part of our bus replacement plan. We need to invest in our buses. We need to make sure that we're replacing the old buses and we have safe buses for students. So I always vote. That's always very important. As far as the transportation, I'll say this. I'm not in favor of the state's EV mandate. I think it's another underfunded mandate from the state. School buses, electric school buses cost twice as much as electric. They don't run as well in the winter. They aren't good on long rural routes, so there's real questions about it. There's questions whether the New York State, whether our power grid can even hold up to what has been proposed. So I'm not in favor of that mandate, but I am in favor of the proposition for the bus garage for the transportation, because I know that there are lots of, I believe, like the parking lot, and there's some upgrades that need there. So I do support it because I do think that we need to invest in that. Hopefully, there has been some pushback on the state, some talk about delaying the EV mandate, which would be good because there's just too much questions, and to be honest, it's likely could cost districts a lot more money than the state is talking about giving us.
Okay, thanks, Jason.
I agree with the budget. I voted yes for it, so I should agree with it.
Okay.
I'm happy we stayed, below or at the tax cap. I was very happy about it this year. For the diesel bus, I know originally before I joined the board, I was always concerned about these buses being like we were buying buses every other year. Like, do we have a dealership somewhere we have a contract with? But I learned, being on the board, that we have, contracts in place, and we have to, I don't want to say recycle. We have to change our buses over every so often, every certain miles, and we get transportation aid for that. We get aid from the state to do that. So we're not really getting hurt in the pocket by doing that. So I was pretty happy about that. So I'm always supporting that diesel bus. But so when it comes to EV, am I a fan of it right now? No, I'm not. But we're in a situation where, lack of better words, we're kind of being bullied by the state to go this route, to say that if you don't get the buses in time, you won't get the funding, you won't get this, and you'll be, stuck with the bill, refer to the bill. So I know Mr. G. Quinto been working with, there's federal aid that we have to apply for, and there's rounds of it. And if you don't apply for that round, you just lost that money. You lost the opportunity to do that. So, and the other flip side of it, that also on buying these EV buses, is that we have to, hand over our oldest diesel bus. So if you remember Cash for Clunkers back in 08, we're doing that not wishy-washy, but swapping out old bus for the new EV, I know, nice and pretty bus. Again, I'm not supporting the EV structure. I'm not a fan of it, but I don't want to put the district in a financial crisis where we have to foot the bill ourselves when we're, eventually getting state funding and make sure get state funding. That's it. Just stick with that.
Okay, all right, thanks, Karnjit. Kim?
Recognizing the heartbreak and the loss that the community has had to endure to get to the budget that we've got, and appreciating and acknowledging that, I do agree with the budget. Not only are we only going less than 1% increase dollar for dollar, if you look at our district in comparison to the other districts in the area, we are increasing our budget not only dollar for dollar, but by percentage less than every other district in the area. The closest match is another district increasing their budget 2.7%, and everybody is well over $1 million in their increases for budgets. So the fact that we're only going less than 1% to increase the budget, and the hard work and that we've had to sustain to do that, I back it, and I appreciate the community for working with us on that. With respect to buses, safety's paramount, and being told that we need to replace a bus for safety reasons, I'm all for it. I want our children safe. I think I've made it very clear during board meetings, I do not like the EV mandate. I've said it time and time again, I do not like it, but the word mandate means we have to follow it. I didn't vote for it last year. I voted for it to go to the community, but then when I actually voted personally, I didn't vote for it. I am going to vote for it this year, though, for a couple of reasons. One, the fact that the transportation facility does need other improvements, including the parking lot, including the building. But those things can't be done if we have this EV situation hanging over our heads, because as Drew explained, we'd have to completely redo work if we end up not doing the EV portion now. The other piece is the money. We've got grants and aid that can help us decrease it, not all the way, but a significant amount. I'm worried that we may not have it in the future, and we're still going to have this mandate over our head.
Okay, Katie?
So I do agree with the current budget. I'm glad that we're at the tax level that we are, but I would hope that with closing a school that we would be meeting the budget. Like, that was the whole idea, right? So the fact that we're meeting that, I'm glad that we're meeting that, but that should be expected because my children's school is closing. As far as the diesel bus, I think we need the diesel bus. We definitely need the diesel bus because after 2027, we can't buy any more diesel buses. So right now, while the electric vehicle mandate is still kind of up in the air, not officially up in the air, we know it's coming, but everyone is kind of wondering what's going to happen based on new news regulations and reports and things coming out. We still have to prepare for that mandate. So I support the diesel bus. The electric infrastructure, I am kind of torn on because I do feel that we don't know exactly where the mandate is going to go, but yes, it is a mandate and we have to follow it. But the other thing that has me considering voting towards it is only because we have already ordered these buses and we've already spent a lot of the taxpayers' money to get these buses, that if we don't have somewhere to protect them and to charge them, then why are we spending all of the money towards the transportation in the first place?
I fully agree with this budget. We did go through the very hard work of reimagining our schools and closing one of our elementary schools through a lot of very hard decision making. So yes, I do support the budget and where we are today on it. I do support replacing a diesel bus because, again, safety is our #1 concern, and we need to replace a bus that is less safe with a more safe bus. And then the EV bus infrastructure. This was signed into law. We have to do it. If we're not going to do it now, when are we going to do it? Prices are doing nothing but increasing, and we have the aid and the grants right now, and I'd be nervous if we vote this down that we wouldn't have them the next time that we have to vote to do it.
Okay, great. Okay, and even though I said that was the last one, I have one more from the audience here. Throughout the process of the school closure, we have seen a lot of turmoil in our community. How would you help rebuild our school community? We're going to start with Karnjit.
Through community engagement. That's the first step. Yes, there was a lot of talks, and I was at some of these meetings that we weren't I almost say we. There was no transparency as much as they would like during the process, and I believe, the next year, September school year, should start with, open communications, frequent communication as possible. Hopefully one day we get our Facebook page back at some point. And once we do that, we can start communicating better like we used to, or we should have. But yeah, that's my goal. That's the intention here. Be more open and bring the community in. There's no need to shut them out. Bring them in to all the talks.
Okay, great. Kim?
That was one of the reasons I wanted to be on the transition committee, and I worked on the transition committee because I didn't think that it stopped when the decision was made to close one of our schools. I love that we are having all of these community-focused events. Come May 12th, please, for our Friendship Fest at Malwick Park, for all the elementary students. But I don't think it should stop once we're done with this first line of events. I think it'd be great to have all of our elementary schools coming together more often together than just every once in a while. And I agree, transparency and communication, it's been something I've talked about for a long time. I'm going to continue talking about it, and that's what we need to do here. We need to make sure we're transparent and that we communicate with our community.
Okay, thanks, Katie.
First part again for me, please.
Throughout the process of the school closure, we've seen a lot of turmoil in our community. How would you help rebuild our school community?
That's a tough one because everybody in the community is going to be kind of facing a different challenge with this level of school closure. I think it's impacting a lot of people differently, especially the students at Glen Warden are feeling it in a different way. I love the work that the transition committee has done. This Friendship Fest, I think, is wonderful. I even emailed the head of baseball and said, we need to cancel our game on Tuesday because we're all going. Like, we're not, I think it's something that is great. Like, all of the kids getting the opportunity to see their friends from sports, but then have a conversation. But I love the way that the transition committee has done it and encouraged all of us PTA moms to not be the ones working the tables and just be there so that we can engage and introduce ourselves to other families that we're going to be attending new schools with in September. But overall, I know we've been through a long, tough couple years that I've been kind of following and engaged in what's going on in the district. And I think the way that I want to try to rebuild our school community is just continue to focus on an upward trajectory, continue to focus on new opportunities that we can bring in for our students, different ways that we can increase engagement with the community, have more transparency. I think Kim is really right about some of the board logistical rules and things like that. Sometimes the community thinks that the board is not engaging for a reason, when in reality there are certain laws and things that are in play that determine how we can interact. So I think that having that transparency and communication about how we all have to proceed is going to be helpful in helping the community understand that we are trying to work together. We just have to be careful kind of with what we say, but just focusing on proactive moving forward and not dwelling on what happened in the past.
I think this is an excellent last question. I'm running for the board because I care. I care about what the plan for Scotia-Glenville is. We've gone through some really tough challenges as a community, as a district. We closed an elementary, very hard thing to do. It impacts every student here at Scotia-Glen, whether they're a kindergartner through a senior. It impacts us all. So this is really an opportunity to rebuild trust this next year and rebuild trust within the board, within the community, and within the administrative offices. We need to increase the transparency, and I think that in the communication, we start to rebuild trust. Trust is built by small actions every day, showing up and doing the right thing for student success every time. We need to make thoughtful, informed financial decisions. We need to bring the community to the table. I stood up here at the last board meeting and said we should have been brought to the table for the school business official. We need to bring the community in. I do think the transition committee did a great job with how they're working through the Glen Warden closure. But there's more work to be done here, and it starts for this board July 1st, and that trust being rebuilt and reestablishing those connections and reestablishing the school as the hub of the community.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
A few months ago, I was sitting out in the audience, and I remember as a parent who's, they closed their school, but I think a lot of the challenge and a lot of the frustration and that was not. People didn't feel heard. And so we've all talked about communication, and I think that is a lot of it. We need to be transparent. Communication starts with transparency, honesty, getting answers. I was actually on the Reimagining Our Schools Communications Committee, and we had lots of great ideas. They just didn't always get out there. So I think we really need to push to really have good understand what's going on, being more proactive with our communications, not just putting things on a website and hoping people go to see it, pushing things out. We have powerful tools like Parent Square that we can really push out information, make sure people understand what's going on. Facebook, that's why I don't know why it's not up again. To be honest, it's been over a month since we've had control. I think that's another one. It sounds maybe silly with social media, but it is a powerful, believe me, it is maybe the most powerful tool we have to create community support for our schools, showing every day what our students are learning, what they're achieving. When you share that every day and see the great things going on in our schools, it helps build that support. It helps rebuild that trust for our community.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Okay, so you're going to have closing statements now. 2 minutes, again, you're limited to 2 minutes. And Kathy will keep track of that. Jason.
Again, thank you to the district for providing this. Thank you for everyone who showed up, and much appreciated. Thank you to my fellow candidates for the Board of Education. I truly think that no matter who gets on the board, we're in good hands. I think we have a great slate of candidates. It's great to see people interested in getting involved. I've had a lot of people say, why would you get involved in a school board? And that's a common reaction, and it's great to see that folks are willing to step up, and they do want to help. So I want to thank everyone who supported me and my campaign. And on Tuesday, May 19th, please vote McCord for the board. Thank you.
So ultimately, I want to ensure that every student who receives an education at Scotia-Glenville is set up for success. That starts from the kindergartner in September to the young adult, long night. Young adult that graduates high school in June and everyone in between. This district and districts around the country are educating the future. Let's make sure they have everything they need to be successful. So please consider voting for me on May 19th. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out. My phone number and email are on the district website under the BOE tab. Thank you all for coming out, and hope to see you in school.
I just want to, at the end of the day, this is really all about the kids and what our district can do to help them. I am very grateful for the support that I've received these past 3 years, and if I have your confidence in order to continue that work, I would love to be able to continue that work for the district. Taking the time to listen to all of us today. If you have any more questions from me, on May 9th, Saturday from 10 to noon, I will be at the Scotia Public Library just to have some coffee, and feel free to come and talk to me to ask me any other questions you didn't have today. But thank you for your support, and see you on May 19th.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you to everyone up here with me. I kind of want to resound what Jason is saying, that I feel a lot better in the direction that this board is headed. Even since more of us kind of started showing up and speaking out, I feel like the board has really been headed in a better direction. And I think no matter who up here takes the spot, I think that we are still headed in that better direction. And I'm glad to be a part of this process. And I just will close with, I started on the ROS committee. I specifically asked to be part of Susan's Reimagining subgroup because I feel, as an educator and someone who works in vocational services and down with the Proctor's program and all of the things that I do, that I could really help to bring all of my educational experiences and things that I have seen in my district and other districts to Scotia-Glenville for the betterment of our students and staff and families. And so I started my subgroup on the Reimagining subcommittee, and as far as I'm concerned, that work is not done. So I want to continue reimagining our district and continuing the upward trajectory that we have been on as a board member. So please vote May 19th.
Thank you for everyone coming out tonight. It is very much appreciated. I can promise you this, I'm going to keep showing up, and I'm going to keep asking what the plan is, and I'm going to keep asking, how do we move Scotia-Glenville forward? How do we rebuild the trust, and how do we increase transparency and really step forward to make Scotia-Glenville as absolutely great as it can be for every child in our district? So please come out and vote on May 19th. And if you're not doing anything tomorrow night or Friday night, the Drama Dragons are putting on Shrek Kids at Sacandaga Elementary at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And everyone, please be sure to vote May 19th, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the B Wing Gymnasium up at the high school.